All right, looks like we're good. Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call our regularly scheduled meeting of the El Dorado Irrigation District Board to order for Tuesday, November 14th. Roll call, please, Jen.
Directors Osborne, Veerkamp, and Zini, and Day present. Director Dwyer is present, participating remotely. General Manager Abercrombie, General Counsel Polson, and Clerk to the Board Sullivan present.
Okay, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for the conflict in the Middle East? Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the adoption of the agenda, and I will remind everybody with Director Dwyer's remote participation, we'll do roll call votes on everything today.
Move one.
Move agenda.
Agenda.
Got a
yeah.
motion, a second. Okay, do we have anybody in the public wishing to talk about any items that are on the agenda? Okay, and the adoption of the agenda, excuse me.
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to page 2 for detailed instructions. Page 2 of today's agenda. President Veerkamp, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the adoption of today's agenda.
Okay, Jen, can we have then a call for a roll call vote on the adoption of the agenda?
How do you vote? Division 1?
Aye.
Division 2?
Aye.
Division 4?
Aye.
Division 5? Aye. Division 3?
Aye.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Okay, communications, general manager's employee recognition.
None this morning, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. Public comment, any public wishing to speak on an item that is not on the agenda for today? Not on the agenda. If it's under the public workshop related, you can speak during that time. Is that okay? Unless you have something that's not on the agenda.
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. This is the comment period for any items not on today's agenda. President Veerkamp, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak.
Yes, sir, we can clarify.
Good morning. My name is Jim French. I'm on the board of Cameron Park Country Club.
Okay,
Along with two of my colleagues, we're here to bring to your attention the new rec turf rates.
so
There-
this item is under our workshop relevant to the cost of service, so we'll be at it here in a few minutes. That'll be the time for you to talk about it.
Okay,
That's an item that is on the agenda.
okay,
Yeah, so we'll get to you in just a couple of minutes with that.
thank you.
Thank you.
That will be item number 6.
Yeah,
But we'll move fast.
we'll get through the
We'll move
formalities here
fast.
first, and we'll be there. Okay, communications, general manager.
Just a brief report from last night. Had a number of the customers attending the special board meeting to discuss the cost of service workshop. Most of them expressed concerns over affordability of the proposed rates. Also, a number of them understood the need for infrastructure replacement. They also asked some good questions that we'll follow up on answering them. That concludes my report on that.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Clerk of the board, Jen?
None today, thank you.
All right, directors. Director Osborne, any comments?
Everything's quiet on my shop.
All right, Director Day, Director Anzini, Director Dwyer.
Nothing for me.
All right, the only thing I have is our next LAFCO meeting is December 6th, where we'll be reviewing and adopting, hopefully, the MSRs for the City of Placerville, City of South Lake Tahoe, and the Cameron Park CSD. That's that. All right, our consent calendar is up next. Do we have a motion for approval on our consent calendar?
I'll move.
Thank you, Director Anzini. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Osborne. Any public comment on the consent calendar? None in the room. Jen, anybody online?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda for the adoption of the consent calendar, moved by Director Anzini and seconded by Director Osborne. President Verkamp, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, please roll call vote on the approval of the consent calendar.
How do you vote, Division 1?
Aye.
Division 2?
Aye.
Division 4?
Aye.
Division 5? Division 3?
Aye.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now we're on to our workshop items. Item 6, finance. Good morning, Jamie.
Okay, good morning, Board. I'm Jamie Bandy, Director of Finance. I'm here this morning to present our cost of service study draft report. Next slide. So just looking back at some previous board action, as you know, we have been working on our cost of service study for most of this calendar year. Early in the year, we presented an overview of some of the requirements and the process for the study. We awarded a contract to NBS in February of this year to help us conduct this survey. We then, the board participated in workshops in June, August, and October. And then most recently, at the October 23rd meeting, the board did accept the cost of service analysis and issued the Proposition 218 notice. So again, today we are here because we have prepared a updated cost of service study. The purpose of the item today is to share with the board and the public the draft cost of service study report that was prepared by NBS. Some background discussion. The rate model that was used for this year's cost of service analysis allocates the district's revenue requirements, net of the district's non-rate revenues, to each of our utilities, so our water, our wastewater, as well as our recycled water. And then ultimately, we take those rate classes and then distribute them to the rate classes based upon principles of fairness and equity. Those principles have also been reviewed by the board as recently as this year. The study has identified the need for a 12% annual increase to the drinking water throughout the next 5 years, as well as a 3% revenue increase for both wastewater and recycled water. And again, the revenue increases are necessary to meet our operating expenses, to make sure that we meet our bond coverage requirements, fund our financial reserves, as well as pay for our annual debt service and any of our outstanding bonds. Next slide. So again, this is the cover of the draft report. This report was included in your board packet, and it is also available online for the public and for anyone else to review. The report does provide all of the detailed analysis that went into the cost of service study. Next slide, Jen. I've included again today, the next 3 slides are charts just showing the impact of the proposed rate increase to residential customers. We have charts for both for low usage customers, average use customers, as well as the high use customers. If we look here on the low usage, you will see that we have it broken out by water only, wastewater only, a combined water and wastewater customer, as well as the water, wastewater, and recycled customers. These charts are showing just the increase, the annual increase to the rates year over year. So again, looking at this one, if you're looking at a water-only customer, in 2024, we're looking at an average of about $6.50 per month increase. Next slide, Jen. And this just kind of depicts the average customer, again, about an $8 a month increase year over year for the water-only customer. And next slide. And then this illustrates the average high-use customer. So again, about a $10.50 difference per month for the water-only customer. And then our next steps, Jim mentioned earlier that we did hold our first community workshop last night in Cameron Park. We have another one scheduled for this Thursday evening here at the district headquarters, with the final public rate hearing scheduled for the December 11th board meeting. And today's purpose was informational only, so there are no board action is required.
All right, comments, questions for Jamie? At this time, we will open up for public comment. Now would be the time. Yes, sir.
Good morning, once again. My name is Jim French. I'm actually the president of Cameron Park Country Club. Along with two of my colleagues over here, we are here to bring to your attention that the new rec turf rates are financially devastating to EID's rec turf customers. Excluding Placerville, EID's highest revenue customer are rec turf customers in 2021. Cameron Park Country Club, we paid $226,000 for EID water. El Dorado Union High School paid $173,000. Buckeye Union School District paid EID $127,000. Rescue Union School District paid EID $99,000. Cameron Park CSD paid EID almost $90,000. Already, these $90,000 to $226,000 rec turf water bills are 50 to 100 times the 2,000 annual water bill of EID's average commercial customer. Yet the new rate schedule would increase rec turf rates 80% more. Under the proposed 2024 to 2028 rec turf rates, schools, CSDs, and CPCC would also see their annual EID water bills increase to above $300,000 for El Dorado Union High School and $420,000 for Cameron Park Country Club. This would absolutely be devastating to us. Compared to 2009, the proposed new rec turf rates cumulatively would increase sixfold from 2009, while commercial rates, residential EID water rates, increased fourfold. Ag rates increased threefold. So our golf course water bill was $71,000 in 2009. But under the proposed new rates, our golf course water bill would increase to $420,000 by 2028. Despite decreasing our water usage, which we have done since 2009, we reduced our water usage by 24%. So with that, I'm going to pass this on to my next colleague, who will give you additional further information.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. My name is Jeremy Payne. I'm the superintendent at Cameron Park Country Club. Just to elaborate on what my colleague was saying, to our understanding, prior to 2009, EID's rec turf water rates used to be 35% lower than the commercial water rates. The rec turf rate was about $296 per acre feet versus commercial rates of $457 per acre feet. The new rates proposed will increase both rec turf and commercial to $1,887 per acre feet. A fourfold rate increase for commercial customers, but a far higher sixfold rate increase for rec turf. The cost rationale for EID's historically lower turf rate compared to commercial was because we as rec turf customers do not require treated water where commercial customers do. Therefore, our much higher water usage and non-need for treated water, we believe warrants separate cost customer calculations and rate assignments. Regarding water conservation, like Jim mentioned, Cameron Park has reduced our irrigated acreage by over 24%, reducing and a similar water use by the same. Another golf course in EID's coverage, Serrano Country Club uses 100 acre-feet more irrigation water than we do, yet their water bill is half that of ours. The only way we could further reduce our water consumption would be to go out of business, which is obviously devastating for everybody involved at Cameron Park Country Club as well as the overall community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. One more. Yes, sir.
Morning, I'm Dan Griffin. I'm the general manager, actually at Cameron Park Country Club. Just to kind of summarize, EID's proposed new rate structure, we think wrongly merges commercial customers and rec turf customers into the same customer classification. There absolutely is no similarity between 100 rec turf customers and EID's 1,500 plus commercial water customers and thousands of multifamily customers. Rec turf customers have spent between $100,000 and $230,000 in EID water bills, while commercial customers average $2,000 in EID water bills. Rec turf customers do not require treated water, and removing water treatment costs from rec turf rates would put cumulative rate increases for rec turf back to the same cumulative rate increases percentages imposed to commercial and residential customers. Customer differences between 100 rec turf customers and 1,500 commercial customers are so huge that rec turf customers warrant a separate customer classification with separate costing and rate assignments, similar to EID's separate costing for the city of Placerville and for agricultural. Further increases to already six-figure annual rec turf bills cannot be absorbed by schools, CSDs, and Cameron Park Country Club. We request that your board reestablish rec turf's historical 35% differential to commercial rates that existed until 2009. In so doing, 100 rec turf customers will continue to be EID's largest revenue customers, but rec turf cumulative rate increases since 2009 will be proportional to those imposed on EID's 40,000 residential and commercial customers. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all three of you for being here and giving us their public input. We appreciate it, and we certainly understand the sensitivity of our rec turf rates and the benefit it is to people out there. I know there's a few of us here that are golfers and understand that component. Jim, in the 2009 review of the rates and the change, maybe just a little history of that thought process or so forth, if you have it.
If I remember that long ago.
I know, yeah.
Back in 2009 was really one of our first in-depth cost allocation studies that looked at how the rates were established for all customer classes. Back then, there was no real good justification to have that differential because the water being used is potable water. And rec turf customers also have the highest peaking factor because of the summertime demands to irrigate the rec turf facilities. So based on that, there was a change back in 2009 that brought them to where we are today. But that was really done in 2009, and then since then, it's just been a proportional increase pretty much.
President Beerkamp, maybe I could just add just a little bit to that. Like Jim, I wasn't here then, so I don't remember, why the board made the decision that it did at the time. But what I wanted to add was that in 2006, the California Supreme Court decided a case called Desert Bighorn. And that was the first time that the Supreme Court applied the principles of Proposition 218 to the retail water service of public water agencies. So for the first time, water agencies had to justify the costs based on Prop 218 principles, which is to say that they could not charge, they had to charge for the actual costs, and they could not charge more than the actual cost of providing water service. What that meant was that water agencies like EID had to reevaluate their customer classes and what they were charging each class to make sure that one class was not subsidizing another, which was the case prior to 2009 at EID. There were a number of customer classes that were being heavily subsidized for probably good policy reasons, but policies nevertheless, the district had to come into compliance with the requirements of Prop 218 and ensure that none of its customer classes were subsidizing one another. As a result of that, the district got rid of some of its customer classes, and it significantly increased the costs of the rec turf rate, among others, in order to recover what it, the actual cost to provide that water service.
Gotcha. Director Osborne, I believe.
Couple items. I've been around this for a long time. When I first got here, our staffing was over, excuse me, over 320 employees. We're down to 238 now. We've reduced our staffing load significantly, which ultimately reflects in our rate schedule. The other thing is that cost of construction has skyrocketed. Even all of our infrastructure costs, if we do an engineering estimate that's over 2 years old, it's probably 10 to 15% undershot, because the cost of construction and materials has just absolutely gone crazy. So in order to maintain a viable water system, we have to charge what we do. And believe me, I don't like paying any more of it than because I'm a high use, my wife has a lot of garden and we are in a high use area. But it is what it is. And I feel really bad about the people on fixed incomes that are in Social Security and stuff like that have minimal income. But it is what it is to have to do what we have to do.
Dr. Day or Director?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Dr. Dwyer.
I actually have a question for Jamie about the cost of service study. I believe if I recall properly, in the direct allocation of our infrastructure costs, the water treatment facilities are removed from the rec turf rate. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. The only time we looked at that was the ag rate, because of the conversion for the ag customers. They used to get raw water, ditch water, and we, based on the district's preference, we eliminated the ag ditches and had them connect to a pipe system, which was a potable water pipe, but it was cheaper to do that than to put in a second line, a raw water line. So as in consideration for that change, we eliminated the treated water component for the ag rates only.
Thank you.
Director Day or Director Anzini? Director Anzini.
Yes, this is a familiar discussion when I first got on it 5 years ago now. And I did help, and we did talk to staff and management and have talked to, I know that the two of you have worked together on this. And of course, one of the prevailing issues between, if you compare it to Serrano to Cameron Park, which is my home base, what we need is that recycled water. And we've already given you information on what it would cost to get into the recycled rate area. I don't know if that would help, but it's something at one time, I think it was predicted it would cost or estimated it'd be $1.5 million to wire the Cameron Park Country Club into. So perhaps you can elucidate that for us.
Yeah, I think this was brought up in 2020, if my memory's correct. The Cameron Park Country Club was concerned about the water prices, which is natural. And there was some discussion about how could recycled water be supplied to the Cameron Park Country Club. I think the engineering estimate was about $1.5 million to do a line extension there. And there was no follow-up by the country club to do that. Possibly with the new rates, there would be an economic incentive to do that. One of the problems is, and we've shared this with the regulators, is as we ask more people to conserve water, there's less wastewater produced because you're not putting it through your homes. Means you have less recycled water to prepare. So there's not enough recycled water right now to really expand the system that much. We have to supplement that with potable water. And that will be an ongoing problem as the state forces homeowners to conserve more and more and more. But we'd certainly take a look at that again if you'd like to. Brian, anything to add?
No, Jim, that's my recollection too. I can't remember the exact cost, but I do remember, and we could try to dig that up, our estimates at the time for converting recycled water. Dan Corcoran just reminded me too that there may be some changes in the regulations for recycled water that would require additional plumbing retrofits on the golf course itself to install purple pipe all the way through their system instead of just up to their existing connection point. So we could look at that too if needed.
So if that's a consideration you want us to consider, we can set up a meeting after this and look at what the line extension costs are and then give you some of those standards that you'd have to comply with internally to the golf course.
All right. Just a thought from me as well. I know the fairgrounds drilled some new wells. I think some others have looked at that also as an option. I don't know if that's an option at all down there. So unfortunately, the cost of everything is just impacting all of us, and options are what we have to try to look to help it work out. Was at a facility yesterday where they let a lot of the area dry up in the wintertime or different times, and they just water some parts, and they do that in the Palm Desert too, due to lack of water. So anyway, we've received input. Any other workshop-related input on this item? Anybody online? Jen?
If you would like to address the board on workshop item number 6, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Bierkamp, it does not appear there are any additional members of the public wishing to speak.
Okay, so again, a workshop item. Another workshop is scheduled for the evening of the 16th here on this particular topic, and comes back in December for final consideration. We will now move on to item 7, which is a finance workshop. Again, Jamie.
Okay, good morning. Jamie Bandy, Finance Director for the district. Now I'd like to switch gears, and today we're going to talk about the 2023-2024 mid-cycle operating budget, as well as our 2024 to 2028 financial plan. So during today's workshop, we will be presenting the information. Everything that we're going to be looking at today has already been presented as part of the information with the cost of service study. So the information will, in some places, sound familiar, and it does parallel the financial plan that's been included with the cost of service study. So looking at some previous board action in terms of the budget, so last year in December, the board did adopt the 23 and 24 operating budget. It is a 2-year budget. So what we're looking at this year is really just that mid-cycle, the second year of that budget. In October, again, of this year, the board accepted the cost of service analysis and we issued the Proposition 218 notice. At that same meeting, the board also adopted the 2024 to 28 capital improvement plan. Okay, today's presentation will include an overview of our 2023 revised year-end projections. We'll take a look at our revenue projections for next year as well as our operating expenses. We'll look at some debt service coverage as well as our 5-year forecast and our projected cash reserve balances. Okay, so beginning with our year-end revenue projections for this year, it does look like our revenues are going to be coming in at about $1.8 million lower. Some of the major contributors, and this is not all inclusive, so these numbers don't necessarily add up to the 1.8. Our FCC revenue and our hydro power sales are both projected in a little bit higher. The FCC is coming in about 2.6 million higher, and our hydropower sales at about $2 million higher. Our rate revenue, however, is projected at about $3.4 million, lower. Both of these are sort of attributed to our wetter season. There was less water use due to the above average precipitation. So that's part of the contributing factors there. Next slide. And then looking at next year. So again, these revenue projections, while you saw 2024 projections last year during the budget, these were updated this year as part of the cost of service study. So the total revenues are approximately $3 million higher, and the major contributors here are going to be the rate revenue increases. And this is just an illustration of the different revenue categories, looking at 2023 adopted budget all the way to the 2024 proposed. Again, the 2024 proposed budget does include the rate increase projections depending on the Proposition 218 outcome. So in here, it includes the 12% rate increase for water, as well as a 3% rate increase for wastewater and recycled water. Next slide. So now just kind of taking a quick look at the development process for the operating budget. Next slide, Jen. Looking at the year-end projections, we basically took from July 31st what our actuals were, annualized those, and also adjusted them for any known differences, and that is how we come up with our projections for the end of the year. The 2024 proposed operating budget is about 3% higher than the 2023 adopted budget, or approximately $3 million. Next slide. So then looking at our expense projections for next year. So again, go ahead, next slide. The next couple of slides, we will look at the different categories broken out. And again, I just want to highlight that this information was shared as part of the cost of service study. So again, the information parallels the financial plan that has been used as part of that. So in 2024, for personnel, we are looking at a net increase of about 2.2%. The gross wages are increasing at about $1.9 million. Our capitalized labor offset is increasing by about $300,000. And then looking at the benefit increases, the medical increase is about $235,000, as well as retiree health increase is increasing about $109,000. Looking at the other half of our operating expenses, our materials and services, overall, we are decreasing by about $1 million. The major contributors here, most of the materials and services, such as our operating supplies, our chemicals, our utilities, our repair services, and our professional services are still increasing by a portion. But our tank recoating that we've talked about in the last couple of years, we have now in 2024 are going to start capitalizing those costs. So we are removing those from the operating budget. So here you'll see a decrease of about $2 million in the operating expenses.
We requested guidance from the accounting firm, and the accounting firm, since it is a extension of the asset life, they considered that as a capitalized item. We had different advice earlier on from a different accounting firm when Mark was here, and we wanted to retest that, and that's the current guidance. We have that in writing.
Yeah, really extending the life of the asset. It's not just a simple repainting, you know, the walls of a building or something. So the auditors did feel that those were.
Appreciated over time instead of 1 year write-off.
But the benefit is we don't have the embedded in our expense budget.
Thank you.
So looking at this chart here, this is really just an illustration of the operating expenses by department. Again, the 2024 proposed budget correlates with what we just looked at. And really the footnote here, because again, we did just talk about the tanks, we had made a change initially in the 23 budget that we sort of pulled the tank line item out to really highlight that separately. And then if you notice in the 24, we have zeroed that out again because of capitalizing it. So that's the change there on this one. Next slide. And then again, this is the same information. This is just broken out now by expense type. So if you notice at the top, we separate the wages and benefits. And if you kind of see the light green highlighted lines, I've sort of highlighted the totals there. So our overall salaries and benefits for 2024, about $38.75 million. Once we've included in the CIP and the development reimbursement labor offsets, that does make the net personnel expenses about $32 million for 2024. And then the next section there is separating out the materials and services. So the second to last line item, the total materials and services, about $33 million. And then the final darker green highlighted item there is the total expenses, which did also match on the previous slide. Now we will take a look at our debt service coverage. Next slide, Jen. So this graph here, what we're showing is our revenues and our expenses, calculating out to what our available net revenues are. The debt service line, so you'll notice for 2024, the total debt service is 14.965. The line below that is our debt service ratio. What this calculation includes is just the senior debt service. The final line on the bottom, the internal debt service ratio, which is a 1.0 test, in 2024, that drops to 1.46. What that includes is total debt service, so it includes all of our bond issuances minus our FCC revenue. And really, that just is showing us the picture of what we have in total, all of the debt that would be due minus any of our FCC revenue. Okay, next slide. And now we'll take a look at our financial plan and our 5-year forecast. Next slide, Jen. Again, when we're looking at our financial plan, there are a number of objectives that we are looking at. In general, we do need to make sure that the district is generating adequate revenues to cover our operating costs, to meet our debt service covenants, and really to maintain adequate reserves. We also need to maintain our current service and reliability levels for our ratepayers. Again, looking at the 5-year plan, we do want to avoid the customer rate shock, and in order to do that is really making sure that we're staying on top of our services and our rate increases and doing those as regularly as needed. Also, part of the objectives is to make sure that we maintain a strong credit rating. This is important when we do go out for bond issuances to make sure that we're getting premium rates and making sure that we're paying the least amount of money for those issuances. And then also to just maintain our CIP funding levels and our debt coverage ratios. So again, just reiterating for the 2024 through 28 financial plan, this does include the rates that are proposed in the cost of service study. So depending upon the Proposition 218 process outcome, the water utility rates would increase by 12% over the next 5 years, as well as the wastewater and recycled water would see a 3% rate increase. Again, as we have discussed, these rates really are important in terms of helping us replace the aging infrastructure that we see within our district, as well as maintaining our debt coverage requirements. Okay, our FCC revenue, again, I wanted to sort of highlight this to really show that over the next 5 years, we've sort of have projected a more conservative estimate of the revenue. In 2004, we are still estimating about a $10 million revenue expectation. That is, however, dropping pretty significantly in years 2025 and 26 to $6.5 million, and then further reducing to $5 million in the later years of the 5-year financial plan. And then talking about our proposed debt issuances. So the district is looking at doing potentially 2 bond issuances over the next 5 years. In 2024, we are looking at about a $60 million issuance. Some of the projects that would be included in this is our Sly Park intertie replacement, as well as some flume replacement and water storage tank rehab. And then additionally, in 2027, we are looking at about a $120 million issuance. And this would primarily be for our Silver Lake Dam replacement, as well as some other projects.
Jamie, then what would be our total, if we issue those 2, what would be our total bond indebtedness at that time?
Perfect
Right there.
question.
Okay, right there. Gotcha.
So this slide here is showing our existing outstanding debt. So this one right now does not include the 2 proposed issuances. We'll show that on the next slide.
Okay.
So currently for 2023, we're at about $391 million total. Next slide. So this is our projected outstanding. So this would include the $60 million issuance in 24, as well as the $120 million issuance in 2027. So you see it in 2027, it does reach a higher peak of about $495 million. As we continue to pay that down, we can go to the next slide, Jen. This graph here illustrates our debt service payments. And so again, the blue and the green are existing bonds right now. The red and the yellowish gold color are the future proposed bonds. As we continue to pay these, though, however, our total debt service, our total outstanding debt will decrease. And it's right around the year 2035 where there's a pretty significant decrease in the outstanding bonds. And what that means overall is it just allows for more bond issuance capacity, which also would alleviate any need for rate increases.
With a very small growth percentage increase in the county, which relates to FCCs, it's very difficult to keep up with the aging infrastructure. So it's one of those double-edged swords where obviously the ruralness of El Dorado County is very unique and something we like, but without any increase, it makes it very difficult to keep up with the cost of especially aging infrastructure.
And the difference is in 2035 is about $12 million in debt service payments. That's a lot of debt service capacity that we can continue to fix things without increasing rates.
Right.
So that's kind of the magic year we're looking at is 2035. Again, a lot of the debt payments go away And some of these long, like the wastewater or the water treatment plants, 20-year estimate of capital replacement is, 320 million. And you think, how are you going to pay that? Well, we're trying to push some of that off to that trough and then use that debt service difference to help pay for that.
Okay,
Just one comment
yes.
on the debt service. Historically, when I first got here, many moons ago, our bond rating was C+. It is now A-. And for our size district, it is the highest rating we can get. And that represents a huge difference in bond payments and what we have to pay in percentage-wise to bondholders. So it's just another historical thing that we're working on, trying to keep the rates as potentially as low as we can keep them going.
Jamie, I know it's hard to estimate what the debt service is going to be, or is that based off of current interest rates?
Yeah, these are currently estimated at about a 4 to 5% interest rate, which is what we're looking at currently. So really, depending on what it looks like in the years that we issue, it could potentially change, but that's as accurate of an estimate as we could get today.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Brazini, good. Director Dwyer, I just want to make sure we ask him if he's got any comments at this point.
I do not. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Pat. All right, continue on, Jamie.
Okay, thank you. So the last few slides, we are just going to be looking at, this is the overall 5-year forecast. The first slide that we're looking at here is total district. So again, just kind of looking at 2024. Again, all the same information that we've gone over today, our revenues, our expenses. You can see there our senior debt and our subordinate debt. The line item there, the total debt service, is what our current annual debt service payments are. If you look at the cash balances, that's really kind of the key line to look at here. This is what the district looks at to really kind of make sure what we look like overall. What does our financial health look like? And then again, towards the bottom, you'll see those same debt service coverage numbers and the ratio tests that we have to conform with. And then the next two slides, this is just looking at the water utility only. Same information, and then one more slide, this is the wastewater only information. And that is the end of my presentation today. If there are any other questions.
Any other comments or questions for Jamie? Director Dwyer, you good?
Yes, thank you, Brian. We're good.
All right. We'll open now to the public for any discussion or input from the public. Seeing none from the room, Jen, anybody online?
If members of the board would like to address, if members of the public would like to address the board on workshop item number 7, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Vierkamp does not appear. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Jamie. That ends our workshop items for today. We will now move on to item 8 under informational items. Operations, Mr. Humbird, our vegetation right-of-way and reinforcement program implementation update. Like Mr. Wilson's going to be here as well. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.
Good morning, Board. Patrick Wilson, Drinking Water Operations Manager, here to provide an update on our right-of-way reinforcement program. So as the Board's aware, staff had requested and the Board awarded a reinforcement right-of-way program staffing to be able to provide not only access to critical facilities, but the ability to perform maintenance in addition to other tasks, repairs, what have you. This program update today will be kind of some updates on our customer outreach, our anticipated schedules going forward, what our priorities are moving ahead. So just for some background, we We have a vast transmission system, as we've kind of spoken about recently today even. With that, with the rural community being able to adequately provide that water, we do need access to these facilities. The transmission system provides source water not only from the raw side to the treatment plants, but also the treated water side into the distribution system where it reaches customer taps. We have over 120 miles of transmission mains, many of which were constructed 50 to 70 years ago, not only by the district, but also the Bureau of Reclamation. They range in size from 16 to 72 inches, and the vast majority are located outside of roadways. Many of them traverse across roadways, however, they are in the middle of nowhere in some cases. And the right-of-way to date is overgrown, and as I mentioned before, the appurtenances lack the necessary access for any sort of maintenance activities, repairs, what have you. So the transmission system is kind of sprawled across the district. Effectively, the vast majority of the water is moving east to west from our uphill Pollock Pines water treatment plants, both Res A and Reservoir 1. As you can see, kind of north and south, we're kind of split up along Highway 50, moving water down to the El Dorado Hills and Cameron Park region. Next slide. And to date, we've been working primarily on the Camino conduit, clearing right-of-way. So shown in green is the areas that we've completed. In fact, that area in yellow has now been completed as well. And we're working to finalize the Camino conduit. Ideally, it would happen this year, but with pending rains and the potential for snow, we may get pushed out. And with that, we've been moving forward with some of the other transmission mains that we'd like to aggressively go after, which is El Dorado Main number 1. Next slide. Which takes water from the Reservoir 1 water treatment plant and brings it all the way down into the Gold Hill area. Along the way, it delivers water to portions of Reservoir 2, Reservoir 3, 4, and 5, providing transmission as well as some distribution services to customers as well along the way. Next slide. In addition to working on El Dorado Main number 1, we'll also work on El Dorado Main number 2, which begins at Reservoir 2 and works its way down to the Gold Hill intertie near Gold Hill Road there. And this transmission main is of the utmost importance, especially in the summer months, to help provide adequate supplies, not only to Bass Lake, but portions of El Dorado Hills when needed and when available through the transmission system. So these pipelines, we have been working with the environmental impact report to mobilize further down the hill options for our staff during the snow rainy season when we're unavailable to complete potentially the Camino conduit. We have sections identified that we can move to continue to move through our right-of-way system. Next slide. So the equipment approach. So obviously staff began working on the Camino conduit. We were utilizing our district-owned trailer chipper. Had a lot of limitations. Mostly the wheels that are on it limit the locations where we can get to with the topography, not only the Camino conduit, but other transmission lines that we'll be getting to. So last August, we received delivery of a track chipper and utilizing the John Deere 160 excavator. We were able to purchase a grapple for that as well, and we've just recently taken delivery of that. That'll help to kind of expedite the removal of not only trees and brush, but also the loading. So the track chipper is not something that's actually loaded by hand, it's only loaded by equipment, which improves the safety element exponentially by removing any of those potential hazards. Additionally, the fire suppression equipment and training has been completed for all staff on the right-of-way, and the board investment, as I noted, provided a significant safety improvement for our staff and an improved workflow as well, which Martin will talk about in a little bit. Next slide. So our customer outreach, we continue to do the direct mail notifications to each owner. Additional notifications are kind of done in batches as we get closer to areas. One of the biggest challenges that we've had, as you could imagine, not all the locations of the pipeline are actually located on customer properties. There's many customers who have wells that don't even have district access. So there's been a lot of communication effort on our part to open up the conversation about why we're doing this work and for them to fully understand the reasoning behind it. It's been well received to date. So staff attempts to coordinate an in-person meeting to mark all the trees and come to an agreement on what trees will be removed. And the district has a dedicated right-of-way page with which we post updates to and showing our progress as we move along the corridors. And our customer service staff is updated on the status as we kind of move throughout the system. We'll also be posting in the future social media updates with key milestones, for example, the completion of the Camino conduit when we do reach that. And as I just mentioned, the right-of-way project overall has been well received, considering as Martin will go through some of the dramatic changes that some of these areas are seeing from the work that we've done. Next slide. So at this time, I'll be passing over to our water construction supervisor, Martin Hubbard.
Good morning, Board.
Morning, Mark.
Martin Hubbard. I'm Water Construction Supervisor in charge of right-of-way maintenance. I would like to go over some of the obstacles and some of the challenges that we've faced out there. As you can see on the left, we have extensive brush over the rural areas where our transmission mains are located. The picture on the left shows we rented a masticator head for our mini excavator, and it was, if you look behind there, all of that manzanita, everything, that whole area was that thick. And with the use of that masticator, it helped us with productivity and safety, because you can imagine someone crawling around in there with chainsaws and chaps and everything else, how much harder it would have been and how much longer it would have taken. The photo on the right shows an area on Snows Road where our Camino conduit crosses through from one of the orchards. And this shows that some of the other challenges that we have to face, which is traffic control, et cetera, so that we can get through all of this. Now, we have trees on both sides, and so the selective falling of this timber requires us to use pulleys and ropes and other means. And if it gets too dangerous with power lines, et cetera, then we bring in certified arborists and we have the trees pieced down. Next, please. On the left, as you see a mini excavator and you see our new chipper. And so as Patrick had explained earlier, in the beginning we had a trailered chipper, and you can see the bench there. In the past, all of the material that was cut and accumulated had to be brought to that trailered chipper because there was no access. And you couldn't obviously put it in the position that you see that track chipper. Once we attained that track chipper, it has allowed us a lot more productivity because we can go in steeper grades and ground. So that allows us to get a lot more done and safely. Also, that larger chipper has provided us to be able to chip logs up to 20 inches in diameter. So it's safer because it's fed by an excavator. We no longer have people hand feeding the smaller chipper. And then on the right, some of the challenges that we're facing, if you can see, those logs are all directionally fell. So we're clearing a swath, and many times we have a 100-foot easement, but we're looking for a 60-foot, 30 feet from center of main for a clearance so that we can have full access to do what we need to do in the event that we have an emergency on any of those transmission mains. So the challenges that we face here are limb-heavy trees that are hanging over properties that are not part of the easement, bad leaners, and that it really requires a lot of effort on our part to rig those trees and be able to pull them to keep them in without damaging our adjacent neighbor's property. Next. So if you see the photo on the left, that is a prior to. That's what it looked like. And then when we were completely finished, now you can see what it looks like when we're done after we've removed the timber and the brush and chipped it and spread it out on the property. Okay, the photo on the left gives you a really good idea of the initial phase of this piece. That's what we were looking at, and then we came through and with the masticator, and this is one of those areas, and you can see it, it has provided basically a fuel break in addition to giving us access for repairs and maintenance. We've been pretty well accepted from all the homeowners when they see the finished product to look like this, because it's one of the other challenges that we've had is we've had other entities that are also doing clearing projects, and they went through, and some of the homeowners were very concerned with the product that was left after those entities had left. So
That's why the Mountain Express is not working anymore.
Moving forward, so basically, we meet, as Patrick had mentioned, we meet with all of the homeowners. I personally go out and we look over the trees and the timber, and we show them, we have it surveyed, and we show them center of our transmission main, and we show the trees that will be removed. And then we have a discussion. If there's certain trees that they really want to keep and it's not in close proximity that could really do damage, that's a talking point that we discuss and come to a successful, outcome. For the most part, once they see and understand what we're doing, everybody has been well received. Also like to mention that in order to get this done, it has required teamwork from many of our departments, including the right-of-way and maintenance, the right-of-way team from engineering, the environmental department to get all of our permits, et cetera, and the utility billing, and the others from environmental and help for notification. So it takes a lot for us to get going and produce that. So again, here, the photo on the left is looking to the north, up a hill off of Snows. And then the photo on the right is prior to, but it's from the top looking down. So you can see how thick that was, and then you can see how we worked our way down through it. We did not make those cuts. That was the old cut from when the transmission main was originally installed. All we did was came down, but you can see off of that cut to the left side of the picture on the left, you can see that's steep and it's rugged terrain. So, we do the best that we can. We get in there and take care of it, and all of the equipment we have, we use 100% in order to be productive. And that's the end of our presentation, but just so that you can understand, that is EDM2 looking ahead from that vault, and that's where we'll be headed.
Headed next. Director Osborne.
I have a related question. I'm on the Fire Safe Council. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, we did a project above Spivey Pond. I can't remember how many acres we had masticated. Could somebody get that information? Because we're talking about building a major shaded fuel break from Placerville to Pollock Pines. But I mentioned that we did a mastication project above Spivey Pond, but I couldn't remember how many acres it was. So if somebody could get that information for me. Pat, thank you.
All right. Director Dwyer, do you have any comments or questions?
Actually, I do. Thank you very much. I have two. One is a question probably for Brian Polson. Part of this project was to get documented easements so we don't run into issues if and when there is a need to go in and repair. How are we doing on those actual formal easements, Brian?
Anticipating that you might ask that question, I'm going to ask Patrick to come up and talk about the work that he's doing with engineering to obtain easements. So Patrick, I'm going to deflect that question over to you.
Way to go, Brian. Director Dwyer, to date, the Camino conduit coincidentally had many easements to the point where we actually have not had to acquire any on that alignment to date. In fact, some of those easements are 120 feet through the center line of the pipeline. Very rare for El Dorado Irrigation District to have that kind of an easement. However, moving into El Dorado Main number 1 and El Dorado Main number 2, both of those pipelines, we do have a handful of easements that the Bureau did record. However, there are some gaps on certain parcels, the way that they did record it. They kind of did a broad brushstroke, if you will. So we've been working with engineering, specifically Aaron Dinsdale, our right-of-way expert. We've been working through each one of those as we come across them, and primarily recording easements as we go. So we haven't gotten to the point where we've had to do that yet. However, we will be moving forward, likely needing to acquire easements across the transmission mains, and that is something that's on our list and our priority to do as we clear the right-of-way.
Thank you, Patrick. And then my other, I guess more of a comment or recommendation is, it is, as Director Osborne pointed out, it is a huge advantage to the community that there is a significant fuel break and access for firefighters that help protect Camino property owners. I'd like to see us coordinate with the newly formed El Dorado County Office of Wildfire Preparedness and Resiliency, and make sure they know what we're doing so they can include our projects in their map of treated areas and in consideration for new grants. We don't want to double submit for a grant on work that EID and the ratepayers have already done.
Yeah, excellent point. Director Day or Director Ranzini?
No, I agree with Director Dwyer and Director Osborne. We need to make sure that we're not double dipping and/or stepping on each other's toes, but working together will get us where we really need to do, and that's the safety of our customers.
Absolutely. I believe we're still participating in the so far, because he's at strategy meetings and all of the work that is planned countywide. So I think we probably are coordinating it very well. It's, again, excellent opportunity to provide this fire break as well as secure our easements. So, Director Day?
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment everybody. I think it's a great program. I know it's a lot of work out there in the brush and the trees and poison oak and all that sort of stuff. So great job, and I'm glad we're doing this program. I'm kind of, it's interesting that we weren't doing it sooner, but I'm glad we're doing it now.
Yeah, again, I'll just reiterate, I know it was very frustrating when we worked with the cohesive strategy to try to get PG&E to clear their easements such as this. And you watch every year, they'll go in and they'll just trim a tree. This is the way an easement should be properly maintained. You travel to Europe and you'll see where they do it, and they keep it clean. They also clear top of ridge tops for a reason, because the fire runs to the top and it usually goes out. So again, just excellent work. Thank you very much. I know it's hard work, but hopefully with the better equipment, it makes it a little easier as well. Okay, so informational item. Any public wishing to weigh in on the item? Jan, anybody online wishing to weigh in on the item?
If members of the public would like to address the board on information item number 8, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Vera Camp, no members of the public wishing to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We will now move on to action items. Item 9, I will be recusing myself, so we'll let Director Day take the item.
All right, item 9, our EID general warrant registers to pay our bills. Do I have a motion and a second?
I'll move.
One.
I'll second it.
Thank you. And any comments or questions? Pat, are you okay?
Good, thank you.
Any comments or questions by members of the public?
Go write the checks.
If members of the public would like to comment on action item number 9, option 1, moved by Director Osborne, second by Director Anzini, please refer to the instructions within the agenda. Vice President Day, does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak.
All right, please call the vote.
How do you vote, Division 1? Division 2?
Aye.
Division 4?
Aye.
Division 5?
Aye.
Division 1, 2, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
All right, we will now move on to our last item, which is our closed session item. Council Polson, do you want me to give the time estimate?
If you don't mind.
I presume no longer than 20 minutes for both items. What? Maybe 25.
For,
Go ahead, Jen. Too much gibberish up there.
the members of the board will go into closed session. We will not report back prior to 10:30. However, it could be after we will shut down this Zoom session and reopen not prior to 10:30, but it could be after.
The board met in closed session with the general manager and general counsel to provide their annual performance review, and the board took no reportable action. That concludes my report.
Right, thank you very much. Review of assignments, Jen?
None today.
Okay, we have a workshop Thursday night, 5:30 here at EID headquarters. Be there or be square, right? Okay, with that, we are adjourned.
At 10:43.
Okay?
So, no, we